What I want, people, welcome back to the channel. Uh, if this is your first time, just ask that you like the video if you do, and if you haven't done so as yet, that you subscribe to the channel so that when we have new material, you will be among the first to be advised. Now, today, want to take a look at a developing situation, not just from a Jamaica standpoint, but a situation that is becoming more and more aggravating from a Caribbean standpoint. And we're talking about the current situation in the Southern Caribbean, where the United States has sent warships, if you will. There are essentially a small fleet of US warships off the coast of Venezuela, and it has created a lot of concern among Caribbean states because there is a view that the United States is planning some sort of a military action against Venezuela. Now, a lot of this has been couched, if you will, in the US declared action against narco traffickers who are trafficking cocaine from Venezuela using the Caribbean Sea Channel and into the United States of America. And so the United States administration in the last couple of weeks have started to bomb ships, if you will, the small vessels that they deem to be drug transiting vessels. They have at least hit 3 or 4 of these vessels so far, resulting in the loss of life of the crew, among others, on the vessels. Now, more importantly, it has come to light that in more than one of these instances, these were actually civilian vessels that were not drug carrying vessels. And so the Caribbean is a little bit in turmoil because some Caribbean states are keeping quiet while others are basically speaking out. Now, of note is the position taken by the Trinidad and Tobago Prime Minister, who has literally distanced herself from the position taken by some of the other Caribbean states with respect to this whole issue. Now, the Caribbean community through Caricom has essentially declared that they want a ramping down of these activities, and they're declaring that the Caribbean has always been a zone of peace, which emphasizes non-militarization, the emphasis on maintaining regional sovereignty, and the use of the diplomatic channels to address disputes. Now, what has been happening, though, is the United States of America has always had a long-standing grievance against Venezuela, and so critics from a foreign policy standpoint who have been watching this thing are of the view that the situation is one where the United States is seemingly seeking a regime change in Venezuela, of course, to get rid of Nicolas Maduro, who is the de facto president of Venezuela. And the charges are that his election is illegal, if you will, that he stole the election from the opponent, Corina Machado, who was recently awarded the 2025 Nobel Peace Prize for her, the stance she has taken against the Maduro regime as leader of the opposition. In fact, she has effectively been in exile from Venezuela, but the Nobel Prize Committee recognize her for a thing. Now let's get back to the issue with the Trinidad and Tobago Prime Minister and her position. Now, it is no secret that for years now, the Venezuelans have always maintained that the Trinidad oil reserves were part and parcel of Venezuela's oil reserves, and has been literally champing at the bits to take action against Trinidad and Tobago. Trinidad specifically, and to Guyana as well, because they are making a claim that these two countries are draining their oil reserves. Now, behind all of that, the Venezuela, it reportedly has the largest oil deposits in the world. And so it makes sense that if you understand that US aggression against other nation states is always based on some economic position, and so the ratcheting up of hostilities against Venezuela shouldn't be a surprise. Now, all the way back, the conflict between the United States and Venezuela has its genesis all the way back in the late 1990s, early 2000s. Now, back in the 2000s, Hugo Chavez basically adopted a strong anti-U.S. socialist and nationalistic line. In fact, Chavez came to prominence as Venezuelan president back in 1999, and he took this position. He denounced U.S. imperialism and essentially took a position where he was building closer ties with Cuba, Russia, China, and Iran, and used Venezuela's oil well to promote his quote-unquote Bolivian revolution across Latin America. Now, Washington has always viewed this as a direct challenge to U.S. influence in the hemisphere, especially since Venezuela was, up until that time, a major oil supplier to the United States of America. And of course, relationships deteriorated after Chavez accused the United States of backing a coup that against him, which failed in 2002, although the United States denied that any such coup was supported by them. Of course, Venezuela, as I said, holds the world's largest proven oil reserves. And so beginning in 2007, when Chavez nationalized the foreign oil companies' assets in Venezuela, including U.S. firms like ExxonMobil and ConocoPhillips, which both of these companies actually won arbitration cases against the Venezuelan government, but they never really changed anything. And so the U.S. retaliated over the years. They basically locked down the Venezuelan economy. They basically crippled the Venezuelan central bank, cut off foreign capital sources, U.S. capital sources to Venezuela, and literally cut them out of the U.S. financial system. It never helped to that Chavez, during that period, had basically repatriated all the Venezuela's gold deposits, not only from the United States, but also from Britain, and brought them back to Venezuela, citing fears that the United States and the other imperialist countries may decide to hold on to Venezuelan assets being held in those countries. So, and then behind that, in the 2000s ratcheted up or aged, there was accusations of human rights violations, election rigging, repression of opposition parties, and corruption between both the Chavez administration and the Nicolas Maduro administration. Maduro succeeded Chavez in 2013. The 2018 presidential election, which the United States and the European Union deemed neither free nor fair, prompted Washington to recognize the then opposition leader Juan Guaido as Venezuela's interim president in 2019. And all that did is just deepen the hostility. So when Trinidad's Prime Minister, Mrs. Persad Bisasor, took her own position, one wonders if this is based on, securing support from the United States, which would deter the Venezuelans from taking any kind of military action against Trinidad and Tobago. And, a lot of Jamaicans are curious as to Jamaica's Prime Minister's stance on the whole US buildup of troops in the Central Caribbean. And one have to wonder if you can blame Prime Minister Holness if he takes a more sedate position, because technically the United States current administration is not out of their remit to promote military action against any of these Caribbean states, separate and apart from locking down the economic gates that are most of these Caribbean states are dependent on the United States for. So Bisasor's position is that she is publicly supporting the United States deployment of US military assets in the Southern Caribbean waters, because in her opinion, these are there to combat drug cartel, arms trafficking, human trafficking, and other transnational crime. And in fact, one reporter quoted her as saying that if that can help stem the criminality and the trafficking and the pain and suffering that this brings to the people here, then yes, we welcome them. That is herself speaking on behalf of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Now, she went on to say that the Trinidad and Tobago willingly supported the International Security Alliance announced by US Secretary of State Marco Rubio, which involves US and several countries in South America to combat drug trafficking in the hemisphere. Now, Mrs. Persad Bisasor repeatedly stated that her priority is the safety and security of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And I guess one can, depending on which side of the political divide you are on, you're going to either agree or disagree with the Holness administration's position, because they themselves are literally dancing between the raindrops. And you can't blame them. There is a tremendous level of unpredictability of the current US administration, and Jamaica's dependence on the United States of America. 65 or 70% of the Jamaica's tourist traffic comes from the United States of America. The country depends heavily on America for other types of economic and other support, and given the capacity of this U.S. administration to flip from one extreme to the next, one wonders if you can blame the Jamaican political leadership for the sedate approach that they are taking. Now, the reality though is that massing that kind of troop buildup in the Caribbean waters is an opportunity. It provides an opportunity for any kind of accident to happen, and one wonders if this is not the intent, because clearly it suits the United States administration to have a regime change in Venezuela. The problem is that is not going to happen from inside Venezuela. And we know that the feeling out there within the international diplomatic circles is that this is the desire of the current US administration. And remember, this is not just a Trump position. This has always been the position of the United States of America all the way back into the early 2000s. It's just that they have never taken the kind of step that the current administration has taken. And so the question is, what are the implications for Caribbean security? Certainly, Trinidad and Tobago's stance marks a significant departure from the more traditional Caricom framing of the Caribbean area as a zone of peace, which again emphasizes non-militarization, regional sovereignty, and dispute resolution. Of course, by aligning more openly with the US counter-criminal activity, the Trinidad government is signaling that transnational crime, especially drug, arms, and human trafficking, is a core national security threat, and external military support is acceptable when framed as targeting these networks. The stance, though, has caused tensions with Venezuela, which views the United States deployment as aggressive, and with some CARICOM states which argue that are far more, they're arguing for greater caution, for transparency, and for regional consultation. The Trinidad government's position relies on the framing that the US activity is legitimate counter-crime operations, but of course critics question the transparency of these operations, the nature of the targets, and the risks of unintended regional escalation. Now, while Caribbean Community, that is CARICOM, has issued a regional statement, which was done on the 18th of October, reaffirming the Caribbean as a zone of peace and emphasizing the need for dialogue and cooperation, it is important to note that Trinidad did not endorse that position, that full regional position, and it basically declared that it was going to reserve its position. But a couple of days later, the following day rather, the Trinidad Foreign Ministry stated that the government of Trinidad and Tobago wishes to once more categorically express its strong support for the ongoing military intervention of the United States of America in the region. Now, this situation is untenable from a Caribbean standpoint. Again, as a Jamaican, you know, what we want, and our Prime Minister is now the head of CARICOM, is that we know he's himself dancing on the railings in terms of this one, but maybe his approach is one that speaks to where level heads prevail. The rest of the CARICOM community seem to support Prime Minister Holness's position, and it would appear that they are speaking with one voice. The question, though, is, does it do the Caribbean community any good that Trinidad, which is one of the more important or influential islands within the Caribbean archipelago, is taking a distanced position from that of its CARICOM natures? Let me know what you guys think about this, because, you know, whatever happens is going to affect all of us. If you like the video, hit the like button, share with your friends, and of course, I'd love to see your comments in the comment section. And if you have not yet done so, subscribe to the channel so that when we drop, you know, videos like this, you will be among the first to hear. Big respect.